Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Belgrade. My name is Anja Petkovic, and I'm Deputy Director of the Belgrade-based think tank Center for Atlantic Studies. This project we are implementing together with MESA10 organization from Slovakia. We have Rastio and Alexandra here. I would like to thank all the university coordinators for doing the really good job, and all the students for being here. As Ivan already mentioned, he already gave you the instructions for the debate, and without further ado, I will give the floor to Ivan.
Thank you, Anja. So as you already know, we have three different questions. So we will start with the question number one. As you know, in October 2019, some EU member states blocked the membership negotiations with Albania and Northern Macedonia. So the following questions are, can this be fixed before the next year EU Western Balkan Summit in 2020? Or does this forecast a slower pace of enlargement or even a coming halt in membership negotiations? As I already told you, first we will have two teams, Team International University of Sarajevo and University of Novi Sad. From University of Sarajevo, we will hear Haris Hibic, and from University of Novi Sad, we will hear Sanja Đorđević. So you have 2 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me here. It's my great pleasure to be here. My name is Haris Hibic, as I was introduced. So, European Council strongly believes that that this blockade will be overcome as it has been done in the past. However, me and my team don't really believe in this because of the strong attitude that President of France, Mr. Macron, has. We also think that his attitude towards the enlargement of EU is very strong, and he is using it to increase his power in France, since it has been going down drastically over the past years. We also believe that this enlargement process will eventually slow down and potentially and will not be solved by the summit that is upcoming. Why? It is because if we look at the countries, they have done everything that needed to be done. Also, I think that the countries, especially North Macedonia and Albania, have lost their hope because they've done everything they needed to do, and yet they were not accepted into the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Haris. So now we will hear Sanja.
Okay, guys, thank you for having us here. It's really nice here, I guess. My team thinks that I'm from the University of Novi Sad. My team thinks that there's no hope for North Macedonia and Albania to to enter the EU because European Union doesn't have interests in that poorer sort of countries, and they maybe solved the problem. Macedonia solved the problem with the name, but they didn't solve the problem with corruption and the rest of. And the EU doesn't have interest in having corrupted countries like Albania and North Macedonia. That's it.
Okay, if it is all, thank you. So you can now be seated. And now we will proceed with teams from Belgrade, Podgorica, and Chisinau. From Belgrade, we will hear Bojana Pravilović. From Podgorica, we will hear Milena Mitrović. And from Chisinau, we will hear Daniela Bludaru. So first we will hear Bojana, then we will hear Milena, and in the end we will hear Daniela. So girls, you have 2 minutes per answer. Bojana.
Thank you. Good afternoon from Team Belgrade. We as a team can say that this was one of the biggest mistakes that European Union has made toward the Western Balkan countries. Why? Because this will slow and already slow pace that we are going. We can see an example of North Macedonia that it has made a huge step forward, and we can see that she fulfilled the main conditions. We have an example of Prespa agreement, but we can see that that North Macedonia hasn't got anything in return. What we can see from this is that we have a relation between European Union and Western Balkans that is a relation between a student and a professor, that European Union has so much power, and that European Union has so many conditions, but that countries, especially Western Balkan countries, doesn't have anything in return. Also, we think that some progress will be made before the next summit. Between the European Union and Western Balkans, because already member states have said that this was a huge mistake. Alternative solution that we can have, like Team Belgrade, is that we can separate negotiations when we have North Macedonia and Albania. Why? Because when we have this approach, we will see that European Union has a more serious approach when it comes to Western Balkan countries, and that it will have more serious problems, both countries, but different problems. So we can solve it in a different way. And this is like very important, because North Macedonia has fulfilled many more conditions than Albania, and European Union should have a different approach to those two countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Bojana. Now we will hear from Podgorica Milena.
Thank you. I'm Milena Mitrovic from University in Podgorica. Our team also thinks this was one of the mistakes that European Union has made, because they already have a lot of internal issues, and this has only just damaged the credibility even more. I believe that this was only like Macron's attempt to increase some political points, not to prove anything in the European Union. Also, I believe that since he said that France, he tried to reform the system of entering the European Union, it was also one of the mistakes that he made. I believe that the credibility in the European Union will also be very damaged. And also, some of the political leaders have told that this will have to be like the scene that European Union has to show that it has unity, which it doesn't have, especially because now it's discussed that the countries will have to enter as a caravan, and it's not based on merit, which is also wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Team Chisinau.
Good afternoon. I'm from Chisinau, and I will speak from the name of my team. So the team from Chisinau thinks that actually these countries have to have some discussions and talks, and as the President Macron said, and they have some major problems that should be solved. It's about economy, and I think if they are going to be willing to invest in the European Union more than just 1%, European Union would have more interested in them to get into the membership, and they just have to have a little bit more development and to do some progress in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we shall proceed to the two final team. Thank you, girls. Now we have Team Banska Bystrica and Team Bratislava. From Banska Bystrica, we will hear Ihor Sobol. And from Team Bratislava, we will hear Karina Aira.
Good afternoon or good morning to everybody. I would like to tell my position according to what happened. From my point of view, Macron vetoed the negotiations for the special purpose. Of course, he said that in these two countries, Albania and Northern Macedonia, the level of corruption is too high, and the governments didn't do enough to reduce the level of it. But I have a little bit different opinion. As far as we know, Angela Merkel is going to leave her office, and probably he would like to become the most influential politician in the European Union, and probably he would like to become the second Charles de Gaulle. Whether he is suitable for this position or not, that's a different question. Speaking about the entrance of these countries to the European Union, I can say that Northern Macedonia has more chances in the next year because in the year 2020, the presidency of the Council of the European Union will be held by Croatia, and maybe they would like to help their Balkan neighbors. Speaking about Albania, with all my respect to this country, I don't think that they are ready to enter the European Union, probably because of the high level of corruption. Macron's opinion about Albania was supported by Denmark and Norway as well. Why this country is not ready? Because first of all, this is a quasi-mafian state. And the second of all, for example, according to the Transparency International, Albania scored 35 points out of 100. 36 points, where 0 is the worst. For example, Egypt has only 35 points. That's it. Thank you.
And now Karina from Bratislava.
So hello everyone. To answer on this question, we need to take into account that France, as a most important member of the European Union, decided that that they want to somehow rechange and establish a new system of the joining of the European Union. And nowadays we can see we can distinguish two important issues, such as Brexit and also growing of populism. So, and it's quite hard to say that we can really impact on these two situations. Because in case of Brexit, we really don't know what will be tomorrow with it, and also about populism, we cannot really govern this problem. So that's why I think that nowadays it's there is no issue on the table to join and enlarge the European Union, because I think that for important and developed countries, now we need to improve and solve and find solution for these issues, and after that be strongest and be open for enlarging. So thank you.
Thank you, Karina. And now we finished with presenting the answers to the debate question number 1. So now we shall proceed to the questions and the follow-up questions. So let me just start with Sarajevo and Novi Sad once again. From Sarajevo, on the follow-up questions, we'll be answering Amar Karaduz. And from University of Novi Sad, it will be Marko Lazic. So now we should give the floor to our guests from all other countries. If there is any question, so please raise your hand and tell us that you have a question. Is there any question? Okay, then I will start. Okay, we have a question, sorry. We are listening to you. Okay, I will break the ice as a moderator. Okay, we are waiting from Moldova.
Good afternoon. I want to ask you, what do you think? Can Albania and Macedonia repeat the situation like in Romania and Bulgaria, in which after 2007 millions of people migrate to Italy and France to find a better life, and that countries, Italy and France, had a lot of illegal employers and economic problem? Thank you.
So the question is, will it be similar with Romania and Bulgaria when they accede to the European Union, with Albania or Northern Macedonia, with immigrations and from Albania and Northern Macedonia going for a better life in the Western European countries?
So hello everyone, my name is Amar and I'm from the team Sarajevo. Basically, what do we think is that currently the France is strictly opposing this idea of possible migrations from the Albania and the whole idea of giving actually these nations visa liberation before they accede to the European Union. But what might be the bigger issue is leaving these countries without a hope of acceding to the European Union at all. So our opinion is that France and the rest of the European Union that is basically against this idea of the enlargement towards the Albania especially, and then Northern Macedonia, because we know that there's less contentious debate on the accession of the Northern Macedonia. Our idea is basically that European Union needs to make the political decision and to allow these countries to get into the European Union and to distribute the structural funds to help these countries to overcome the problems of the possible migrations to the center or the core of the European Union. Thank you.
Since the main question you were asking was about migrations, the migrations are happening. That is something that is going on for ages now, even for decades, especially from the whole region of Western Balkans, when we are talking about Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia, and Albania, every country in this region. So it isn't something that is a new trouble for European Union and for all those big countries like France or even maybe Germany, which is the country that absorbs most of the working power, most of the working class that is migrating from these countries. Some countries from this region have like a white Schengen that allows people to work in European states for 3 months. So it's something that is going on for years. So whether or not the joining Macedonia and Albania joining European Union would have impact on that, I think that that is something that cannot be stopped. But when you're talking about Romania and Bulgaria, I think that they weren't as good economically as Albania and Macedonia are now. Those countries were integrated in European Union in the middle of 2000s, and it was like only 15 years or something since they left communism. So the economic situation in those countries weren't as good as it is now. So that's why most of people migrated from that when they had open borders, which they didn't have in past. So that would be my answer.
Thank you, Marko. So now we should proceed to other teams. Thank you for your answers. We will have Team Belgrade, Team Podgorica, and Team Chisinau answering the following up questions. So from Team Belgrade, we will have Aleksandra Pasic. From Team Podgorica, we will have Angela Đaković. And from Team Chisinau, we will have Kristina Tomsa. Okay, do we have any question from the audience? Banska Bystrica. Okay, then I will start with a question. So, I'm sure that you all heard about the non-paper for the new accession methodology that President of France, Emmanuel Macron, presented last month. So my question is, what do you think about that non-paper? And do you believe that for Western Balkan countries, it would be good to have some kind of sectoral integration, which they presented last month?
Okay, thank you. So the team Belgrade thinks that this French initiative could possibly be a burden to Western Balkan countries because now we have chapters and you can open a few of them at the same time. But when you have like those 7 stages, you need to finish the first one before going to the next one. So it could possibly be a chance to slow the process of joining the EU by these countries. And also, if you put the most difficult things in the first, the first stage, these countries will not be able to do all the things that are needed from them to do, and they could possibly even not join at all. So yeah, it could be a problem for these countries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Angela, and I'm in front of University of Podgorica. So we as a team think that this situation is really a big discouragement for Western Balkan countries, except especially for North Macedonia right now, because North Macedonia fulfill all these conditions and nothing happens. Now it's very big discouragement for Serbia as well, and nobody guarantee if she resolve the problem with Kosovo, it's gonna be like a good overture for membership in EU. So it's not. It's very big discouragement for Western Balkan countries. It's obviously we have divided opinions in leaders countries of EU about Western Balkan question. Also, I can say that emphasis is more or on unfinished things than on things that they are already finished. So they are more saying you need to finish more things, but they don't say, okay, you did a great job till now, let's do something else. So I think that current situation is a big test for Europe as well, and it's very important for Europe now to show a unity and proper mechanisms for resolving that kind of problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christina. I'm from Team Chisinau. So first of all, knowing that North Macedonia have all the standards to enter in UA, and knowing that introducing this non-paper limits and take this process for a long time, it's more like you say you can do it, but you have to be better than that. So it's a deal, but not so big. It can be solved, because if the population wants to develop to accept the reforms, they will do. But knowing that the stages are more, and if you don't pass one, or if you you are not at all completed, you can pass the other. And it's important to know that the European Union had done something not good for this by discouraging these states, and not this, but also the others that will want in the future to enter in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Team Chisinau. And now we will have the last two teams from Banska Bystrica and Bratislava. And from Banska Bystrica, we will hear Petra Boroshova. And from Team Bratislava, we will hear Tomasz Duriš. So if there is any question from the audience, please just raise a hand so we can see you. Okay, then I should maybe the floor to the team members from other teams. So is there any question here for the team members from Bratislava and Banska Bystrica? Does anyone have a question? Then I should ask as a moderator. So I'm sure that you heard about the mini Schengen idea here in the Western Balkans with Albania, Northern Macedonia, and Serbia. So what do you believe, will there be any positive from that initiative, or is it just a replacement for the accession process towards the European Union? Will it slow down an enlargement process, or is just an idea that could boost the enlargement process towards the European Union?
Okay, well, I'm Petra Bošková from Team Banska Bystrica. So I think it's a great idea with this mini Schengen with the Western Balkans and the European Union. But I think that, first of all, I think that the blockade membership negotiation with Northern Macedonia and Albania, it's very wrong decision from the European Union, because personally I think it's sends a wrong negative signal to the maybe other potential candidates which can allow the European Union. And I think it should personally I think that when the states comply all the points and demands which can go to the European Union, it not should be rejected. So I think that maybe the EU Western Summit will fix this problem about the membership negotiations.
Thank you, Tomasz.
Yes, so thank you for the floor. So my opinion is like the two-way opinion, because first of all, this mini Schengen area could actually help a bit, because from the point of the European Union, we will have only actually some sort of one country to deal with as a trade or in a trade area. So it will be good for us. However, for the Northern Macedonia, Albania, Serbia, and the countries of the Western Balkans, it's not so great, because by this decision, we are telling them like, okay, we cannot really accept you to the European Union right now, even though you fulfill any criteria, you fulfilled all the chapters we opened with you, so you should actually be in the European Union. However, France and the other countries vetoed you. So that means it's like saying you, okay, you should be in the European Union, you will not, you will have some sort of very weird concept of the trade policy with the European Union. And this is the first thing. And the second thing, which is important, is that what will we actually say to the Romania and Bulgaria? Because these countries should be in the Schengen area. However, in other countries, for example, like Netherlands, vetoed this accession to the Schengen area. And when we give the Western Balkans mini Schengen area, what would Bulgaria and Romania think? Because this would lead to the rise of nationalism and the rise of populism in the Bulgaria and Romania and other countries. So,
thank you, Tomasz. So, is there any question maybe from the audience, or we could go further? Okay, if it is all, thank you. Okay, now we should go to the question number 2. As you all know, on October the 9th, 2019, in spite of a wide international discord, Turkey started an operation in Syria after a US pullout. So the possible questions are, was this a legitimate and correct action by Turkey? What else could have been done by Turkey? And do you think that it will have any impact on December 2019 NATO summit in London? So we should start again with University of Sarajevo and University of Novi Sad. From Sarajevo, we will have Hena Begovic. And from University of Novi Sad, we will have Arsenije Mandić. So you have 2 minutes to present your answers.
Hello everyone, my name is Hannah. So regarding the action, is it legitimate or not, we think that there are two approaches. One approach is from the Turkey perspective and the second one is from the US and rest of the NATO members. Basically, Turkey believes that this action was legitimate because they had to defend their national security against the terrorist attacks, and since the NATO and Article 5 hasn't been invoked yet, they were the one that they had to do it. However, US and the rest of the NATO members see this action as not profitable for positive results, and they condemn it. However, US sees that Turkey has some security problems within its borders, but this action isn't the most required one, since the second question was what Turkey should have done differently. Well, we think that the question should be what NATO should have done differently, because NATO is the one who should have supported Turkey against the Syrian regime and Russia, because Turkey is one of the greatest alliance within the NATO. However, and to the follow-up of the last question, we can say that since the agreements and press release with Mike Pompeo and Stoltenberg, we can see that after the agreement between the US and Turkey, there's both sides are satisfied, and there won't be any changes within the NATO. Thank you.
Thank you. Now Stefan from Novi Sad.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize for the misunderstanding. I'm Stefan, not Arsenije.
Apologies.
Yeah, of course, yeah, maybe I'm a spy or something. Yeah, so like my team does like a resolution of that question. Was this a legitimate and correct action by Turkey? Can you define me like legitimate? Isn't like politics all about interest and stuff, not by guided by the emotion, the moral story? So legitimate, it's not like the right way of understanding intervention by Turkey. Turkey in this whole Syrian mess see opportunity to solve century-long conflict with Kurdish people, and like Turkey now is on that like gap between West and East and playing a really big role in the whole world politics. So if we need to be on the wise side, on one side, we will tell like we are more with the Kurdish people, but we completely understand intervention of that kind, because like as she said, Turkey needs to defend their country's priority. Syria problem, so I'm completely with okay. I understand why Turkey got that invasion. And the second thing, do you think that it will have any impact on the Sabre London NATO summit? Of course they will, because like any intervention of that kind will have impact of NATO summit and NATO, and it like NATO thinks about it, and like NATO eyes are open and watching what's going on there. But I don't have a vision, so I don't know what's going on that NATO summit. So we will see. We'll just wait and see.
Okay, and thank you, and my apologies once again for the misunderstanding. Okay, thanks, Team Sarajevo and Team Novi Sad. Now we will continue with Team Belgrade, Team Podgorica, and Team Chisinau. No, Team Banska Bystrica, my apologies. So from Belgrade, we will hear Ilija Gavrilovic. From Podgorica, we will hear Valentina Ostojic. And from Team Banska Bystrica, we will hear Marek Majerčik. Okay, now we should start with Ilya from Team Belgrade.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ilya. I'm from Belgrade. Well, we as a team Okay, we as a team perceive that this action made by Turkey is definitely illegal because Turkey breached all principles of international law, including UN chapter. But when this comes to legitimacy, we think that this term is more flexible. Actually, according to Turkish EU, this action is necessary and justified because they wanted to create a safe zone on the border between Turkey and Syria and take care of refugees. But on the other hand, they actually inviting the neighboring country and commit the crime actually there. However, the strict absent from international community was absent, so we think that the Turkey wouldn't suffer any major consequences. There also was the meeting between Trump and Erdogan 2 weeks ago, and nothing happened. Actually, Erdogan gave back the letter he previously got from President Trump. So we think that the bigger problem for NATO now is Macron's statement that NATO is brain dead, and this statement can have impact on all NATO members. So we think that this would be the major problem on NATO summit in London, and probably this summit will be maybe crucial for the future of NATO and allies in there.
Thank you, Ilya. And from Team Podgorica, Alexandra, if I'm right.
You are correct. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Simoni. I'm coming from the Faculty of Political Sciences in Podgorica, University of Montenegro. First of all, this is clearly a very sensitive topic, and the opinions on this topic are very divided. But some of the leaders have made statements that this was a legitimate action because Turkey had Turkey was concerned about her north border because there was a possibility of creating a power vacuum there because there are several sides that have interests, such as Kurds on one side, and then we have the USA, Russia, and Iran, and then we have the terrorist groups. So this was definitely a legitimate concern. This action was targeted at tourists and terrorists and their headquarters and their equipment, and not at civilians, but some casualties still appeared. The important thing is that Turkey justified itself by calling the 51 article of the UN Charter that says they're entitled to self-defense, and even Stoltenberg made a statement that Turkey informed NATO about these actions and discussed it with NATO before. What is important also to state that Turkey had a big burden with migrations, and the only thing the European Union did was help financially with the crisis, but there were no actual mechanisms to deal with the migration, and Turkey is not able to deal with this amount of migrants with their economy. This will definitely be one of the most important topics on the next NATO summit, and there will definitely have to be a consensus made on these topics, because if this issue is not resolved sometimes in the future, it could lead to destabilization of the whole region, especially knowing that Turkey itself had problems with negotiations within the European Union. So that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Marek from Banska Bystrica.
So hello everyone. From my point of view, the actions of Turkey are not legitimate and even not illegal. What I'm concerned is that policy of Erdogan is very one-sided, and they don't look on the other side. They don't look at the Kurds, but they know their position. They know their status of Turkey in debates between different NATO members. They are using their geographical advantages. They are using their status that in their country is more than 3 million refugees against their allies. Yes, we are in NATO. We are allies on the paper, but in reality, it's completely different story. At least from my point of view, because he's bullying European Union if we attack diplomatically and politically on Turkey that these actions were against the international law. They will he will open up the borders with the European Union, and 3 million migrants will be in the European Union in like few months. That will cause a huge security threat and also a huge economical threat to the whole union, and the rise of populism, rise of nationalism, and different fascist and extremist group. Uh, and on the second part of the question, what could NATO summit brings? I think this topic will be kind of like taboo because the European Union cannot abuse, cannot attack on Turkey because they are feared and they don't have a courage to deal with the migration crisis. And from the side of the United States sees that Turkey's military defense budget has doubled since 2016, and they want to sell weapons. They want to sell tanks, rockets, and so on and so on. They want to continue with program of advanced military fighters. So Turkey is a huge partner for NATO, but Erdogan is using that for bullying all the NATO members, at least from my point of view.
Thank you, Marek. So we're now finished with the 3 teams, and now the last 2 teams from Chisinau and Bratislava. Thank you. From Chisinau, we will have Sanda Dobrovolshi, and from Team Bratislava, we will have Michaela Polivčáková. We should now start with Christina.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so in my point of view, I think this action, it can have 2 sides. It can be a correct one or a non-correct one, because if you look from the positive side, Turkey wants this to elaborate this safe zone to create create this safe zone for the refugees Syrian that are in Turkey, and it's a good point of view if you see in this way. But in the other way, if you look, it's a negative one, because we have victims, terrorism acts. We have a lot of person that dies, especially Kurds that are situated and located in this place, and it's a negative one. I'm not sure it is a correct or not correct. I'm in the middle. Depends on which way I see this. Speaking about what action that Turkey could have taken, I think that an action that Turkey could have taken was to create a diplomatic agreement with the Syrian without the war, without this person that die, and it will be more simple and a diplomatic way. And the last question is about the NATO summit in this December. I think that it will have a great impact, because it's one of the principal topics that will be talked, and it maybe will be solved, this question about the Turkey and how to stop this continued war with Syria. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Michaela.
Thank you. So I think Turkey is just defending their actions, like protecting its security, and they think that this was was made by international law, but they created the safe zone, but they displaced the Kurdish people and population, and it means it cannot be in. It was violating of human rights, and it was criticized also by EU member states, and so this means it's maybe it can be legitimate act by Turkish people, but not from the other perspective. And also what can be done next. So the Turkey is threatens to EU. They can open the borders and allow the migrants come to European Union, and also the increasing of the Russian influence in this region. And last questions, I don't think so. They will something happen, like maybe they will like the summit will end with some official result, but I think the member states of NATO, they want to keep like status quo, and they don't want to like fight against like Turkey, because we know like Turkey has the second biggest army in NATO, so maybe it can be related this. Thank you.
Thank you. If it is all, now we should proceed to the follow-up questions, and I'm calling the audience to participate in this debate. So with the follow-up questions, we should start with Sarajevo and Novi Sad. And from Team Sarajevo, we will have Sumeja Kladancic. And from Team Novi Sad, we will have Marko Apostolovic. So if there are any questions, just please raise your hand and we will hear you. There is a question here from the audience.
My
Hello,
question
my
is
name-
about, we know that after the attack, the ISIS refugees escape in the Europe. What do you think about if this action, if Turkey thought about ISIS and the consequences, or it's like a premeditate, something like this?
Excuse me, can you repeat?
Can you just repeat?
We know the ISIS fighters were now refugeeing in Europe. Turkey thought about this thing previously, or they premeditate to like liberate them?
You mean, did they think about the consequences that if
The question is about the consequences of liberating the ISIS fighters and what could possibly...
of them migrating to Europe?
Could it possibly affect the next...
Well, in the past few years, we did see some terrorist actions in Europe, Western Europe, in Central Europe. So I do think that there could be actually huge consequences with liberating them, because it has been proven in the past that they can organize themselves in any country they want. I mean, there were attacks in Russia, there were attacks in France, there was an attack in London. So I do think that it was a huge mistake. Well, I don't know if it was a mistake or a deliberate thing that Turkey did, but I do think that it was a very dangerous thing to do.
Thank you, Sumeja.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sumeja. So basically, I agree with him. I think that there will be great consequences, and the Turkey, they think about that. So I don't have anything else to say regarding to that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any question from the audience in any of the other cities? Just raise your hand, please. Okay,
Novi
there
Sad,
is a
we have a
question
question.
from Novi Sad.
Hello, my name is Ivan. What do you think about selling Russian weapons to our country, Turkish country, and country of South Africa from Russia?
Can you please repeat the question?
The question is about selling weapons from Russia to, if I understood correctly, South Africa and other countries. So I guess that the question was about the influence of Russia and the role of Russia in this particular case. So how do you see that?
So, well, it is a bad thing, but we have to take it into consideration that Russia is not the only country selling these weapons. That we know that other countries like the United States and bigger military players also supplied a lot of countries in the Middle East, in Africa. So I do not think it is a good thing because it creates more conflict. But I also think that it doesn't have as big as an impact. And Russia, if you ask the question whether Russia has now like an impact and an influence on these countries, I do not think, because they do have other suppliers, and if Russia wouldn't supply them, they would find someone else.
I think that maybe Russia selling those weapons to other countries use this like some strategy to in some way conquer these other countries. So I agree that is a bad thing, but they still do it. So.
Thank you, Sumaya. So now we shall proceed to the other teams. Thank you. So now we will have from Team Belgrade, Sava Mitrovic. From Team Podgorica, we will hear Sara Djokovic. And from Team Banska Bistrica, we will hear Alena Bednarikova. Is there any question from the audience? Please just raise your hand. We are encouraging you. Is there from Banska Bistrica a question? Okay, maybe I could start as a moderator. Okay, we can start with my question and we could later hear them. So I'm sure that all of you heard about President Macron's interview in The Economist, where he said that NATO is brain dead. So my question is, how do you think that that his interview will have an impact on NATO and on the relations between the NATO countries in spite of the summit in 2019 in London? Maybe we should start with Sava.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. From our perspective, Macron is now just a politician, and he's trying to become a statesman. And to become a statesman, he has to give some huge initiative in European Union. He's trying to reform European Union to establish EU army, which will be independent from United States of America. And I think that we can conclude that this is just a political statement, and I think that French will always have a good relations with the United States, but he's just trying to become bigger than he is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Team Podgorica, maybe we can hear Sara.
Okay, so I think that this is the one of the Macron's attempts to collect political points. And I think that the biggest problem in the EU now is that we don't have a clear center of power, which should be contact in case of crisis. We don't know if it is Paris, Berlin, or Brussels. And I think that current situation is a big task for Europe to show unity at a time of crisis and to show proper mechanism for resolving problems. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Team Banska Bistrica, Alena.
Okay, so I believe that President Macron has a huge impact on Europe as a president, but I don't believe that he does have the same impact on NATO as an alliance. And I believe it will be better if we would have some independent army alliance like Europe wants, because if America doesn't want to be involved in every area in the world, and maybe in Europe, then they shouldn't have the same alliance as we do. So we can try to sorry. can solve our problems ourselves. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now, just a moment. Do we have a question from Banska Bystrica, or from any other?
Someone raise up.
Okay. Is there any problem with the mic in Banska Bystrica? Okay. Okay, the question from Banska Bystrica.
Do you hear me now?
We hear you. No, we still have a problem. Okay, we are waiting for Banska Bystrica. Okay, maybe we should go here with Team Bratislava. Tomasz has a question, so if you could just pass the mic to Tomasz.
So thank you for the floor. My question is considering one event that happens, I think it was 2 years ago, and it was at the time where the Turkish state was actually accused of buying oil from the Islamic State, from the ISIS. And my question is, do you really think, or do you think at all that the activities of the Turkey right now should actually be aimed to the reclaim of this cheap oil, or of some of the, from some of the oil fields that are in northern of Syria, northeast of Syria, because as we know, the aim of Turkish forces was actually to go all the way to the northeast of Syria, where one of the biggest oil field of Syria is.
Thank you, Tomasz. Question? Okay, we should start with Sava, as a gentleman.
I can yield the floor to
No.
If I understand correct, and when we are talking about the Middle East, it's always about the oil, and I will be so stupid if I say that this intervention has nothing with the oil rigs in North Syria or something like that. But I think that the main purpose of this intervention was to resolve on one stupid way, resolve their problems with the Kurds in North Syria, and it was the main reason why Turkey intervened, and just I think national security at first, but maybe there's some reasons about the oil, but I'm not so sure. It's my opinion.
Thank you, Sara.
Okay, so Syria is a zone of interest for a lot of countries, but we can only assume was this attack was about the oil, or the main targets were terrorists, their bases and their military equipment, and the situation can develop in any direction, and we can see right now the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't think we can say that it was their intention and target. Maybe it was their aim, but we will never know that. But I think the main aim for them was to enlarge their area of their interest. Yeah, thank you. And that's it. I think we will never know about this. So.
Thank you. And now, thank you, guys. And now we should proceed to the final two teams. Now we have from Team Chisinau, Valeria Gogineci, if I'm right. And from Team Bratislava, we will hear Karina Aira. Okay, can we hear Banska Bystrica?
Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
So I've got a question. First of all, I just want to tell, the U.S. investment in NATO consists of 63%. And in the future, if U.S. will leave NATO, what future awaits NATO? Because, if U.S. will leave, it will continue from so many problems.
You understood the question? Okay.
So thank you for this question. And yeah, it's the same question which we will ask if we are dealing with idea that European Union need to create their own army. So and yeah, that's a good issue that we still don't know that how it will be look and where will be America in this case. But I think that the European Union now it's not so strong to create their own army, and because I don't remember, I'm not sure that, but I think that almost everywhere in the European Union we don't have this. That all men need to go to the army mandatory. So that's why it can be lead a huge problem that we will not have a lot of population who will go to army. So it connected because America is a country which is extremely important for NATO, and we have a lot of financial benefits and army from America. So, and again, it will lead to problem with Russia again. So, because Russia, Turkey, where will be Turkey in this case? Because Turkey bought a lot of weapons in Russia in the same time in NATO. So that's why it will lead to a lot of problems. So. From my point of view, I'm not sure that now it's a great idea and it's reasonable to start to think about European army and and about, I don't know, union just with America itself. So thank you.
Thank you. And now, Valeria.
Yeah, thanks God I don't have only 2 minutes to share my opinion. So finally I can share my idea about this specific topic. I'm from Team Chisinau, and thanks for the question. Oh, definitely for the whole point of this problem, what I see at this moment is the same long story of ancient Romans who have been invading the Europe saying that civis pacem para bellum. So they bring the peace through war. People are alarming and they're, of course, gathering and investing more money into the army, into the military. And it's not only about NATO. Even United States itself, they're investing more than 47% to the army, the local army itself, just to keep the peace inside of the country. So considering this entire situation and the problem, I'm 100% sure that other countries will be more mobilized and they'll start to do something in regards to, in the terms of gathering peace, not through army, not through forces, not through killing people, but maybe they'll start to learn and understand the concept of diplomacy, which will be more powerful as the word of the word and the power of the word itself and dialogue in the common sense will be more important and stronger than just simply the power of the weapon. First of all, but secondly, as we know, even Macron and France representative has been saying that they are gathering more money for supporting NATO at this time. So I'm 100% sure that the other countries will be involving more and more into NATO just simply to support, just in case United States will decide to invest less money into this topic. That's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Let's just hear if there is any other question from the audience in any other city? Just please raise your hand. Okay, we have a question here from Sarajevo, and it will be heard.
What do you think, guys? Why Germany promotes internationally controlled security zone? What promotes internationally controlled security zone in North Syria? What do you think about that?
So, what do you think about a safe zone that could be created in northern Syria, in spite of the Turkey action?
Okay, so as I mean, if you don't mind, I would like to. Okay, sure. So as we all know, this idea of creating the safe zone into the Syria territory was a good point, just because, of course, a lot of the refugees would finally get the house and will have shelter. Nevertheless, seeing that at this moment the entire territory is invaded by the ISIS and a lot of people are having cruel actions of terrorism, they are feeling the consequences of this non-rational, not thinking forward actions. However, as I could say, Germany and French always had a lot of influence into United Europe and to the, of course, United Nations, just because they're the strongest power of diplomacy. So I think that would be a good idea. Nevertheless, it has to be a planned thing. And looking forward, of course.
Thank you.
I'm completely agree with my colleague in this case. I think yes, it's important to have a safe zone in the territory of Syria, at least just because they are living a lot of different nations. So, and we need to, and also a lot of Kurdish people live there. So, and we need to we need to have this zone just to somehow save people from the same what we can see now invasion of the Turkey. So we need to have it just to somehow save civilians in this territory. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your answers. Now we shall proceed to the question number 3. Okay, as you all know, we are witnessing growing foreign influence and interference, such as Russian interference in 2016 US presidential elections, the spread of disinformation and fake news, Chinese One Belt, One Road initiative, propping up friendly regimes that are leaning towards authoritarianism. So, the possible questions could be, what impact do they have on democratic development and progress, especially in Central and Eastern Europe and Western Balkan countries? And in case, what are possible actions for coping with these attempts aimed at undermining democratic development and possible instruments for raising awareness about them? So, as at the beginning, we should start with University of Sarajevo and University of Novi Sad. From Sarajevo, we will hear Haris Hibic once again. And from University of Novi Sad, we will hear Jelena Pavic. Okay, we will hear Haris first.
Okay, so thank you for having me again. So firstly, to clarify, what impact does China and Russia have in Europe? The Russia has mostly Europe through Balkan countries, especially Serbia, with its goods connections. Other than that, Russia has been mostly interested in, let's say, messing up things in the United States. They've done it. They've shown that it can be done even to the most powerful democratic countries such as the United States. So it can be done to the less democratic countries, especially in Europe and in the Eastern Europe. So the way it needs to be fought is actually combating the fake news, because of the freedom of speech, especially in the most countries in Europe, allow the fake news to be spread easily, and Russia is using it as an advantage. Our proposition or our think of solution could be actually creating combating the fake news via national curricula. So fact checking, fake news debunking as well. So that's for the Russia. As for the China lately has been trying to kind of implement their culture and their means of governments through the 17+1 BRI, one road, one block initiative, which also brings problems to the European Union. However, the states that are actually in the 17+1 initiative see China as somebody that could solve their problems. The first reason is that most of the countries actually come from the communist background. They have communist backgrounds. The second reason is that those countries, after the 2008 financial crisis, the EU has tightened their policies on loans, and China has been there to offer loans to those countries and like a good hand to those countries that are undeveloped. So the solution to China could be that democracy could be again promoted in all of these countries where it's slowly deteriorating. Also, the transparency of the tenders, licensing requests, and investment loans should be made publicly for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear Jelena.
Well, this is the burning question here in Serbia, so we wanted to focus on Serbia. So if we take our country as an example, it's really hard to work on democratic development here. We know how the system here works. And every day we have fake news. Every week we have fake news. Just last week we had fake news. And when you see that, it's really hard for example, for young people, it's easy to spot fake news and to search the internet and stuff. But for older people, that's the problem. And the older people are people who vote here in this country. So, for example, older people look after traditional media and they read newspapers and they read tabloids. And for example, we had a tabloid here in Serbia, a newspaper. They had 380 fake news in 1 year, in 365 covers. So it's a really big problem here. And when you say we have interference from Russia and China, I think that we need to talk about interference from our own government. And our government says that, oh, it's from Bulgaria, they're spreading fake news, but we are the ones who are spreading fake news. And I think that is the basic problem here. Just last week, we had a Russian spy, and it was really interesting. We need to look at the timeline. For example, we had a Minister of Finance who plagiarized his doctorate thesis, and then we had a Russian spy, and our whole country was focused on a spy. No one was focused on the real problems here. So I think it's really hard, but Serbia is not the only country which has that problems. You can see Brexit, and you can see how social media played a huge role in Brexit. And I think that in years to come, we'll see some new apps, and we already had, I mean, he talked about them. You have ways to figure out which news are fake. So we just need to educate people, especially older people, and we need to work on our democracy and our freedom of speech here in Serbia. Thank you.
Thank you, Jelena. Thank you, Haris. Now we shall proceed to the next three teams. From Team Belgrade, we will hear Marko Žunjić. From Team Podgorica, we will hear Kristina Šepanović. And from Team Banska Bistrica, we will hear Filip Sopoći. So we shall start with Marko.
Well, hello everyone. First of all, we should acknowledge that there are both formal and informal way of influencing both normal and political life in divided society, especially in society that are facing democratic backsliding in the past few years. So it always happens when we have big international powers, which actually influence those smaller countries for their own interests. So, by the main reason why they do that is actually economical or geostrategic reasons. So the main mean of influence is actually the possession of information. So by controlling the information and making it public, we actually can change the minds of politicians and also the general population. The greatest threat to the democracy today is the fake news trend, which is especially dangerous today when we have accelerated technological development in the world, when information actually is going all over the world in a matter of minutes and it doesn't pass any fact check. So we have a lot of fake information today. Also, actually the democratic society is actually the well-informed society, and today we know that European Union is doing so much to stop the influence from the East, especially from the Russia and China. The problem here is actually that EU asks from the countries, especially in the Western Balkan and Eastern Europe, to develop the way of fighting the violation of human rights, defending the basic freedoms, and so on. The rule of law, of course, but actually the China is offering money and investments to those countries without those, the proposals, and they don't search, they don't have such requests. So the countries are inclined to agree with those China's offers. Also, how can we fight this? We can actually inform the young people, especially young people, because they use internet, and on internet we have a lot of fake news, so they should be aware of the threat there. We also should raise awareness to through civil society. It is the core of the fight for spreading misinformation. The institutions are also very important. We should also take actions in high schools with young children so that they know that the internet is very dangerous, and we always have those advertisements on TV shows and so on.
Yeah.
And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marko. Now we will hear from Podgorica, Kristina.
Hello, everyone. I am representing University of Montenegro. My name is Kristina. So my team and I think that Western Balkans has always represented the zone of interests of big Western countries as for Eastern countries of power, especially because we are the post-socialist bloc. I think it's easier for countries in the region to resonate with others post-socialist bigger countries than us. Their main impact is on less democratic and countries and weak economies. For example, Montenegro is, as you know, in the process of construction the highway, which is a Chinese project, and it's a good example of how third countries can spread their impact beyond their borders. As you know, One Belt, One Road initiative is I think the biggest project of China beyond their borders. And it's easier for China to invest in our countries because they have a big labor, so they can invest more money. One of the ways to spread impact in Western Balkan countries is to control and censor the internet and mass media, and of course create the fake news. We think that in some ways fake news can start war, especially in transition countries, because the people, they are not very informed. They cannot distinct fake or real news because we don't have the mechanism, and the problem is that. So we have to establish mechanism to deal with this phenomenon. Thank you.
Thank you, and now we will hear Filip from Banska Bystrica.
Thank you for the fall.
Firstly, we should realize that countries like China and Russia, with that strong international status, economical and political potential, and always hunger for more influence, are really in nowadays gaining considerable influence. Mainly China. I would like to talk more about China. China's strategy, or China is really firmly marching to its goal, I think, from my point of view, to achieve technological leadership or digital technological leadership in the world, and by various strategic partnerships or international projects, or really big influence in the digital technologies, they are trying to influence maybe a whole international environment. For example, in European Union, now Digital Silk Road, the project, has reached into European Union, as we know, and competitive IT players like ZTE or Huawei are gaining really big influence, and it can be quite dangerous because, as I think some of you maybe heard about social credit system in China, it's very interesting, but at the same time very dangerous thing. If some of these parts will get into European systems, it can be dangerous to a democratic development or democratic values, as we mentioned. So from my point of view, maybe some kind of solution or think about these issues. Europe countries, because Europe is the main thing that interests us, because we live in Europe. Europe countries should be very careful about any kind of cooperation with China, and mainly in the international, or mainly in the digital technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. And now, thank you once again. And now we will have the last two teams. Team from Chisinau, we will hear Daniela Bludaru, and okay. And we will hear from Team Bratislava, once again, Michaela Polivčáková. First, we will hear Valeria from Chisinau.
Considering this fact, I really appreciate that everyone has shared their opinion in regards to the One Belt, of course, on spreading the fake news, and of course discussing all the nuances and the details of this concept. However, my most concern as the representative of the economical faculty and as an entire team from Chisinau, my most concern is not about the political area itself, but about the people who are having the lifestyle of living into the countries which are not having the vote and the decision into the international system. So my most concern is about the countries that basically, not being a part of these international organizations, they may not have the influence on the international trading market, and they might not have a chance to share their opinions. Even small people from the small countries do not have a vote into regards to this concept. So definitely spreading fake news or having the international organizations such as One Belt only for a specific country into a certain area may have an impact on people's life. This is why I would truly think that the main and the most important thing here will be to have a dialogue. So with common sense, definitely with ideas spread between the countries which are not part of these organizations might be important to keep a track on what people want. Because if there is no freedom of the decision for a simple citizen, then there is no democracy. But that's what we go for. Thanks.
Thank you, Valeria. And now we will hear Michaela from Bratislava.
Okay, so I agree with my colleague, and I would like to also tell, of course, the impact of China or maybe Russia in this region is huge, but the main thing is they're trying to maybe impact. They were trying maybe to come from outside, but now we can see the tendencies. They are trying to impact society from inside, and maybe when our society is weaker, it means the fake news, people, they don't know they are the fake news. And as my colleagues before said, like young people, they are like aware of this, like educations, maybe now in high schools and so on. They are trying to avoid these things, and we can, like my colleague said, like we can like search for young people, or maybe my parents, they still can search for informations on internet, but maybe the older people who vote, and also we have to, like, not, maybe the right word is not educate the old people, elderly people, but maybe to find some way how to spread these informations on, or maybe just to find some way how to speak with these people, older people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we finished with delivering the answers on this particular questions. And now we have the final round of follow-up questions. And we will start again with Sarajevo and Novi Sad. And from Sarajevo, once again, we will hear Amar. And from Novi Sad, once again, we will hear Marko Lasic. Is there any question from the audience? Just please raise your hand so we can see you. Okay, we have a question from Banska Bystrica, so we will hear first them.
Before, my colleagues told about China and Russia, and you know the type of politics Russia is aggressive politic, and you know, like China, it's like quite land grabbing. China have 1.3 billion people, and they just want to settle them in the Europe and in another country, and because of them they just start grabbing place. So my question is, how can we stop this aggression, and what do you think about it?
So if I could rephrase it, what do you think that we could possibly do to stop the growing influence, particularly of China, as the colleague mentioned, or other big states?
In opinion held by our team, basically what my colleague also has presented is that the idea of controlling the Chinese initiatives in the Eastern and Central Europe and the Western Balkans would be the solution for this problem would probably be greater involvement of the European institutions in form of the control of these investments, in order to push the China to some extent to, besides just giving these loans with no stricter conditions, to attach some conditions to these loans in order to make these countries bind to those loans and to be able to repay them back.
Thank you.
I would just like to make a short comparison. I think this is just a purely economical question. You can remember how it was in the 90s when the America and the European countries had like big economical boom. They had a lot of money they could invest in other places, and they chose to invest it in Eastern Europe. That's what helped all of the Eastern countries to progress. So that is something that China is doing right now. They have a lot of money. They cannot invest it in China because they are overpopulated. They have their own economy, so they are trying to put that money in use somewhere else, like in Africa. They are doing the same thing in many African countries as they are doing in European Union. So they are attaching they have some clauses in getting that money, like our companies need to build those roads and everything, but that is something that European countries did in the 90s and America, so it's just the same thing, but different players.
Thank you. Do we have any other question from the audience or from someone here? Okay, Tomasz would like to ask you something, so if you could pass the mic to him.
Okay, thank you for the floor once more. My question is considering the Hollywood actor Sacha Cohen, who actually 3 days ago said, if Hitler would live today and he made a 30-second propaganda video, Facebook would actually share it and Facebook would not delete it. So do you think that the regulation of the social media in some sense, regulation in order to keep the human rights and so on. Do you think this is the way we should undertake to resolve in short term these issues of the fake news, of the conspiracy news and so on?
Thank you, Thomas. If just I can add as a moderator, we had public hearings in United States Congress by the Senate and the House of Representatives committees of Mark Zuckerberg, and we had the fake news agenda when it comes to Brexit. So maybe you could answer with having that in mind about the regulation of social media.
So yeah, it's absolutely a problem because we are facing the problem coming from the European, or I'm sorry, from the democratic values in itself. So freedom of the speech, at the same time having the right to express your opinion, and also having the algorithms that are somehow unregulatedly spreading those news based on the numbers of the shares and the likes. So absolutely, I think that some sort of the regulation should have been undertaken, and that this freedom of the speech to some extent has to be regulated but not limited at the same time. So I think that this is something that has to be done, but at the same time I think it's also very problematic and very complicated to do.
When talking about social media, we should have something in mind, and that is that all of the big companies that control social media, like Facebook, Google, Twitter, come from US. And the US has a different policy of free speech than Europe. In US, you can say anything that you want. You can even address some fascist or Nazist idea, and the law is protecting you. But whereas in European countries, you need to you have some regulations on what is the free speech, what you can say. Like in Europe, we like to say that our freedom starts when other man's freedom stops. That isn't something that is common in US, so it's that culture difference between people who are running social media and us in Europe who are using it. Like here in Europe, all the electronic media, TV stations, anything is regulated by the law. You have law that says what you can broadcast, what you cannot broadcast. We should implement that on social media, and I think that would be a great start. Not the end, but a great start.
Thank you, guys. Now we shall proceed to the other themes. We will hear from Team Belgrade, we will hear Aleksandra Pašić. From Team Podgorica, we will hear Milena Mitrović. And from Team Banska Bystrica, we will hear once again Ihor Sobol. Do we have any question from the audience? Maybe. Okay, Anja has a question for you.
Okay, I would like to connect the first topic that we discussed with the third one. Do you think that the decision of the European Union to block the membership negotiations with Albania and Northern Macedonia, as well as the slow speed of negotiations that are currently going with Serbia and Montenegro, are going to create a fertile ground for the various malign and non-malign foreign influences in the Western Balkans?
Thank you, Anja. Maybe we shall start with
Could
Aleksandra.
you possibly rephrase it, because I'm not sure I
The
understand.
question is, do you believe that regarding the blockage of the negotiation with Northern Macedonia and Albania, is there a space for growing influence of other states and actors rather than European Union, and for the fake news and the...
Is that decision of the European Union and the process of negotiations with the rest of the Western Balkans going to be the fertile ground for the foreign influences in the Western Balkans? Is that going to leave a space?
Thank you, Anja.
Am I going to answer first?
Okay, we shall start with Aleksandra.
Thank you. So I think, yes, I think like the slowing pace of negotiations could possibly open a space to interfere more in these countries. And also, I think the most important thing to do right now is to spread information well
by like reliable sources. So we need to inform the people first. What are their rights? So people have a right to know the exact information regarding fake news, regarding their path to European Union, regarding everything they need to know. And we need to inform the people that it is important to fact check everything. So we can do that through like organizing courses. We can do that by social media. Yeah, so social media is responsible for like spreading this information, but social media is useful also because young people are on social media. So we can like have some, I don't know, media campaigns about this stuff. So I think that not everything is lost, not everything is like bad. We have a space to like make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Milena?
Thank you. So my opinion on this is that authoritative regimes are willing to respond to these things, and they're willing to respond much faster than the EU, especially now when European Union is sort of divided because they have Brexit on one side and then they have Western Balkan on the other side. Those are big problems for European Union, and I believe that they have to fix the internal issues before they fix anything else in the other countries. And for those countries, I would recommend to not believe everything they hear because those influences always have some hidden terms. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ihor?
After blocking the negotiations for these countries, what could the European Union expect? First of all, the rise of nationalism in those two countries, because some people and their governments, they are disappointed, that's for sure. And in Northern Macedonia, as I read an article, they are going to set up an unexpected elections. And this is a great chance for pro-Russian parties, political parties, and then they can increase their influence in those countries. So I think that this situation is a great fertile for foreign interference, especially from the side of Russia, because probably they would like to use their chance and to increase their influence on the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Okay, I shall yield the mic.
Okay, just one short question and short answer. Do you think that European Union should give some slack to the Western Balkans?
Yeah, it should. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, they should definitely give the slack because some of the countries are fulfilling the merit and they should enter the European Union before other countries. That's like, it's seen and it's happening. The biggest problem is that they want the caravan entrance. So I guess it'll happen and some countries will have to wait for the other countries to enter, which is not good for the region. Thank you.
I have a question for you. What is slack?
To cut some slack, to just give some space and maybe to speed up the process or.
Okay. So I think that this is the question whether the European Union wants to see Western Balkan countries in their among their members or not. If they want to see them, if they wanna increase the numbers, probably yeah. But you never know. You know, maybe somebody would like to block negotiations again. You never know.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to add anything else? Okay, so thank you guys. Now we shall proceed to the final two teams. Thank you. From Team Chisinau, we will hear Daniela Bludaru. And from Team Bratislava, we will hear Tomasz Duriš. Is there any question from the audience? If there is, just please raise your hand. Do we have a question? Okay, maybe I shall start with a question. So, what do you believe who should be a stakeholder for the raising awareness among youth or among others about the fake news and disinformation? Should it be a civil society, non-governmental organizations? Should it be a state institutions? So who should be a stakeholder for that?
Thank you. I think that's a very interesting question and would have a lot of opinions here. My own opinion about this is that both of them should do it, starting with government to control the fake news, because in my country, in Moldova, we have a lot of them, and government is, let's say, has their own mistake in that. And also, I think youth and non-profit organization, also civil society, should do some actions about it, more than it is done right now. And that's it.
Okay, Tomasz?
Thank you for the floor. Since I was really working with the youth organization, I can tell you that they should help, or they could help. However, most of the youth organizations in Slovakia, for example, are financed by the state, mostly by the state. If they're financed by Soros, and stuff like this, so people are not so willing to, for example, give your children to their care because George Soros is financing it. So this is the first thing. And the second important thing is that the state should be the first to counter the fake news, to counter the conspiracies, and so on. It is mainly because the fact that if we take a look at the Finland case, where the Finland is actually the most educated country in the world, or have the best education in the world, we can see that in Finland, Russian propaganda is not working. They used to have a Sputnik media in Finland, and nobody was reading it. It's like when you have the more educated people, the less people will actually read the propaganda or will believe the propaganda. So, in my opinion, we can talk about Finland, we can talk about Estonia and the countries with the best education in the world, and they are countering this fake news stuff, these conspiracies really well. So, I think the most important actor in this is actually a government and the state government.
Thank you, Tomasz. Do we have any question from the audience once again? Or from someone here? We have a question from Banska Bystrica, I think. Okay, but we have a question from Banska Bystrica.
Good afternoon. I want to ask you: have you heard about the European country are scared about the situation in the Syria, and can this military situation impact on the future of the European country? Thank you.
So, how will the situation in Syria impact on the Europe and its business?
Well, this is a pretty tricky question. Of course, to some extent, it will affect the European business and trade because the biggest nations are joined the Syrian conflict, as a USA, as a Russia, and also as a China. So, it's really hard to say because outside of the European Union, there is some sort of flame borders. Like on the borders of the European Union, there is almost always a conflict. So I think at all, it won't affect European trade business policy so much because we are actually the greatest or biggest market in the world. So that means the China, the USA, the Russia will always want to go on our market and trade here. So I think it won't be so big of a deal. However, we can say that many of these countries are selling weapons, and even the European countries were even selling weapons to Syria. For example, as Czechoslovakia, we were selling them tanks, we were selling them rifles. So I think to some extent it can actually affect it, but mostly not.
Thank you, Daniela.
This is a tricky question. It's normal for European Union to be afraid of that, but at the end it will not affect that much, as all the arguments already have said.
Okay, and to close this debate properly, we have a question from Montenegro, the last one.
My question is connected to the fake news and the control of fake news. Since we know, what? Okay, since we know that the countries that are most concerned with this and that are doing something to change are China and Russia at the moment. Russia is working on a server to censor the fake news and the usage of internet. Do you think this could be misused or abused in a way that it's going to limit the freedom of speech, since we know those countries in the past have been socialist countries where the freedom of speech is kind of limited?
Thank you.
Do I understand correctly? Is it about how it would affect the freedom of speech? The
Yes.
fake news?
To make it more specific, do you think that it could go to extreme levels, like in North Korea?
Okay, to which extent it will go with the limitation of freedom of speech?
So, because in the countries that you mentioned, right now is the problem of fake news. Is also the problem that the civil society, or like the society, is uneducated about how to listen to the news and how to spot a fake one. So they are also afraid to say their opinion. Maybe this will not go to an extreme level, because we also have rights and we're in a democratic state, but people, I think at some level, society would be afraid to express their opinion free.
Thank you, Tomasz.
Well, I want to ask you: did you think, or did you had thoughts about this in a case of Russia and China, or in a case of Eastern Europe? Like, should I answer to what extent the freedom of speech will be limited in the Central and Eastern Europe, or in China or Russia? Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, in China there is limited freedom of speech at all the time, and even now it will be much more harsh, because they presented the system of the social credits, which means that when you misbehave, you will get penalized in form of that you won't get a ticket to travel by fast train or by the plane and so on. So I mean, the freedom of speech in China was never a thing, and we could pretty much see that in the case of Hong Kong, because nobody in China, or almost nobody, actually knows what is happening in there. So the propaganda is working, and the Chinese people could have the feeling that they have a freedom of speech. However, they have not freedom of information. So they do not have the real information, and they cannot really be saying what they are thinking on the several issues that they have not intel about it. And in case of Russia, well, you have some sort of freedom of speech in there, but it's still not sufficient. We could pretty much see that with the Alexander Navalny, who is the head of the anti-corruption NGOs in Russia, and he was actually accused, and he was accused for treason, I guess, and he was imprisoned for the expressing the real facts about the Vladimir Putin or Dmitry Medvedev, I'm sorry, and about the Chaikas, which are the rich family in Russia. So I think when you are in Russia, you can pretty much say what you want. However, you could get some consequences on it. It's all depend on which level would you are saying it. Yeah.
Thank you, Tomasz. Thank you, Daniela. And before we close this debate, I would like to wish one thing for you to do. In front of yourself, you can find a green and red papers. So I would like to ask you kindly, first of all, what do you think about what we heard from Team Sarajevo? Do you agree with them or disagree with what they have told us? Please, if you agree, raise your green card. If you disagree, please raise your red card. Okay. This is not like in the elections in North Korea, but I think that we agree all with what we have heard from Team Sarajevo. Thank you. Then we had Team Novi Sad. What do you think about what we have heard from Team Novi Sad? So, shall we continue, or you think the same what we have heard from Belgrade, Podgorica, Chisinau, Banska Bystrica, and Bratislava? I think that we reached an agreement that we had a great debate. And before we close this debate, I would like to yield the floor to Ms. Anja Petkovic.
Okay, once again, thank you all, and thank you, Ivan, for moderating this debate. I would like to remind you, everyone, that we are going to see each other in April, first in Slovakia and then in Brussels. We are going to have the presentations at the EU Parliament as well as the NATO headquarters visit. So we have something to look forward to in the future. Once again, thank you all. Thank you for the universities who were following the debates and asking questions, and thanks to the students and Mesaten organization, and also all of you who participated. Thank you.